Hello, Michael. Welcome back to All Ears English. How's it going today?
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a beautiful fall day at the end of August in New York.
Oh, New York is beautiful in the fall. And I'm so happy to have you on the show because we've been friends for many, many years. You've been on All Ears English 3 or 4 times in the lifetime of the show. And
hmm
our listeners love to hear from a New Yorker. Tell us about your Where Else You podcast, by the way. Tell us real quick about your show, just so our listeners know where you're coming from.
Oh, okay. So it's called the Happy English Podcast.
hmm
It's little bite-sized one-point English lessons, a phrasal verb, idioms, grammar point, pronunciation point. It's a variety of different things, and once in a while, special guests like you guys or other
Yes.
English teachers to mix up
Yes.
things. Yeah.
I love it. So our listeners should go check that out, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But I want to
hmm
do a formal introduction so our listeners know exactly who is on the show today. So, guys, Michael was born and raised in New York City, so he's a native English speaker. He's a passionate English instruction with almost 30 years of experience helping people just like you improve their English. He started his professional English teaching career in Sendai, Japan in 1994. Since then, he's worked in the field of international ed, both in and out of the classroom. And in 2010, he started Happy English, a company dedicated to helping people speak English better. 2010, that's many years of really building your company and helping English learners. I love it.
When I think about that, it's incredible because so much has changed in the technology
Oh
in
my
the last
gosh.
13 years, right? So
So
yeah.
much has changed. But today I'm excited to get into New York City. Now,
Okay.
I've lived in New York. You're a lifetime New Yorker. I think we first met in New York City when you were working at Geo's way back in the day. This was 2000.
Did
Yes, yes, because I think you were working there and I was teaching there for a summer. And I remember, is that right? Did you work there?
Yeah. Oh my God. That
Yes.
brain cell just woke up.
Isn't that crazy? So we go further back than you realize. It's so
Oh my God.
funny. But, anyways, I think New Yorkers are very distinct because they share kind of a common connection around, generally around, sometimes around complaining, but it's part of the life. And so you can connect
Right.
around that. And one of those topics is transportation. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In a lot of circumstances in communication with different people, the most common small talk conversation, right? The
hmm
common small talk
Yep.
topic
What is
is
that?
how's the weather, right?
Okay. Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and in New York, it's more like, what are you annoyed about today? The trains. The trains are always late.
The
The
trains.
express train runs on the local track. All of a sudden, my local train went express. I had to go 3 stations over.
Oh, and I love it with the accent too. It's just so funny. I have so many fond but not fond memories of sitting on a train and all of a sudden you hear in the loudspeaker, "We're going express, we're going express." And everyone runs off the train. So this is where New Yorkers connect. And so that's why I
That's
want to
right.
have you on today, Michael, to give our listeners a few little hints, vocabulary hints on
hmm
how they could begin these conversations and carry them on. So today you have 3 vocab expressions or phrasal verb sets for our listeners. Where can
Right.
we start if we want to
All
start
right.
that
Let's
conversation?
start.
Mhm.
Let's start like this. New York City has 5 parts, technically called the Five Boroughs. There's
Okay.
Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx. Right.
Mhm.
So Manhattan. Most New Yorkers, I would say all New Yorkers,
Yep.
just call it the city,
Right.
right? So that's the first thing. If you come to New York, if you want to sound more like a New Yorker, um, and you say, "Oh yeah, my hotel is in Brooklyn, but I'm walking around Manhattan today," that sounds a little bit not natural,
That's
right? So,
so interesting.
oh yeah, my hotel's in Brooklyn, but I'm going to spend the day in the city.
I'm always kind of confounded by that fact because in my mind, New Yorkers know that New York City is, like you said, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Staten Island, the Bronx. So in my mind, they would know that more than the average tourist. So it surprises me that they say refer to Manhattan as the city when they know that Brooklyn is also the city, right?
Right. But we think that way, like the city is the city, and Brooklyn is down there, and Queens is over there, and the
I love
Bronx
it.
is up there. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
Okay.
the city,
All right. It's good. So we've got our orientation now. And
right?
so, in terms of knowing where we are at any given moment, and then it comes to moving around this
Right,
amazing city. And so,
right,
this is where phrasal verbs come in, right?
right.
Yeah.
So you want to when you're here, um, you can get around, basically by subway, bus, or taxi, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I know a lot of people have trouble with that vocabulary, but here's an easy way to think about it, right? So when you board the subway, when you,
Yep.
right, we say get on the subway.
Yes.
And
Okay.
then when you exit, it's get off.
Get
So
on.
you get on the bus, get off the bus, get on the train, get off the train, get on the subway, get
Mhm.
off the subway. It's the same with any public transportation
Okay.
where you can stand up.
Ooh, that's a good
Be-
tip. Pro tip
because
there.
we think we look at public transportation like a stage, right? So you get on the stage. Hey, everybody want to rock and roll, right? So you get on the stage, and then
Right.
after the concert, you get off the stage.
Okay.
So you can stand on the bus, you can stand on the subway. So you get on the subway, get off the subway.
All right. But what about when it comes to car sharing, ride hailing, that kind of thing, a
Right.
taxi and Uber, which Uber wasn't even around when I lived in New York, but I guess that's becoming more and more common for New Yorkers, or Uber, Lyft, maybe
Yeah.
driverless cars, who knows?
Well, the driverless cars, I haven't seen them yet, although I don't know if a lot of those drivers are actually conscious.
Right. Right, right. It could be
But
driverless anyways, but yeah.
they're like headless drivers.
Right, right.
Um, right. But in that case, you're going to get in the Uber and get out of the Uber.
Okay.
So
Okay.
get in the Uber, get out of the Uber.
Mhm.
And if you're, because, you get in, it's like you're in a box. You can't stand up. You're inside. It's very small. So you're in the taxi, you're in the Uber, or you're in the cab, right? So we
Mhm.
use the word cab to mean taxi, right?
Right.
And
Right.
you mentioned a moment ago, you're on the street and you wait, you want to get in a cab,
Mhm.
but you have to let the driver know that you want that. So you raise your hand
Right.
and you hail a cab.
Yeah, that's a very important
Hail a
expression.
cab. I'm going to hail a cab.
Okay.
Or at a fine hotel, if you go to a fine hotel in Manhattan, the
Mhm.
concierge will say, "Would you like me to hail a cab for you, sir?"
Yes,
And
yes,
they say, "I can hail a cab."
and we all know it can be very hard to get a cab during when it starts to rain in New York, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So many movies where we see people on the street trying to get a cab. But the one thing I'm not seeing here, and before we move on to the next piece for our listener,
Yeah,
the one thing I'm not seeing is getting in one's own car, because it sounds like New Yorkers don't really drive. Would you agree with that? They don't really have cars, or is that a myth?
yeah.
What do you think?
No, first of all, a parking garage, a 1 month in a parking garage for your car is around $500 these days.
Wow, that is a lot of
So,
money. Yeah.
right, that's just to park the car,
Yes.
right? Plus the gas, plus the insurance, plus all the other stuff.
Okay.
So, and New York has so much public transportation that we don't need a car. It's not necessary.
Absolutely. And I always felt really invigorated with the amount of walking I was doing. 20
Right,
miles, you've walked 20 blocks, you've walked a mile. You're feeling great. It's a very
right,
active lifestyle if you do make your way around the city. So now we know
absolutely.
getting on the subway, getting off the subway, getting in out of an Uber or a cab. What else do our listeners need to know if we want to go the route of the subway, as many of us do? Yeah.
Okay, so there's a certain way that New Yorkers like to talk about the buses and the subways.
Hmm.
And the way it works is the subways in the city are either a number or a letter.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. And the reason is until about the late 1960s, the subways were several independent companies.
I didn't know
So if
that.
you look at a
Interesting.
subway map, if you look at a subway map these days, you'll see, hey, there's the blue line, that's the A, C, and E. There's the red line, that's the 2 and the 3,
Right.
and the 1. And if you take a subway to a major intersection like Times Square,
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice that to walk underground from one line to the next line is pretty far, or it's a weird, got to go this way and this way.
Yeah.
And again, that's because originally those were not connected. They were
Okay.
all separate companies.
Fascinating.
Right. So, so what we have these days is it's all one system,
Mm-hmm.
and the trains are either a letter or a number.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you want to go to Harlem, you need to ride the A train.
Yes.
And these days, most New Yorkers will tell you either the letter or the number. Oh, you want to go to Harlem? Take the A.
Okay.
Oh, you going to the World Trade Center? Take the E.
Okay. Got it. And when would they say, because I know when I lived in New York for a few years, I lived at 88th and Lexington. So I often said the 4, 5, 6. So they would name all three lines. Do we say that sometimes, or it would just be the one line, whether it's your local train or your express train, the 4 versus your local train, the 6?
All
How
right.
frequently do you hear the three lines that run on the same line? I'm not sure if we're confusing our listeners now.
Right. So what Lindsay's talking about is some of the lines. There's one line, but some of the trains are express on that
Mhm.
line, and some of the trains are local. So the 4, 5, and 6. The 4 and 5 are express, and the
Yes.
6 is the local. And so if you are going from, let's say, I don't know, where are you going to go on the 4, 5, and 6? You're going to
Like
go to
Union
Union Square.
Station, Union
Right. So
Square.
Union
Mhm.
Square. All three trains stop there.
Yes.
So
Okay.
if you wanted to go to 42nd Street, all three trains stop there. So in that case,
Okay.
you could say, oh, you just take the 4,
Take the
5, or
4,
6
5,
to Grand.
6.
Yeah, so you're in
Perfect.
Grand Central, take the 4, 5, or 6, and you can go to
Yes.
Union Square.
That is a pro tip, right? Because it could get confusing. Whereas if we want to go from Grand Central up to a local stop, like what was it, 77th, then we would
Right.
need to take the 6th,
You
right?
got
The
to take the
6th train.
6.
Love it. This
Right.
is getting very specific about New York, but important to know, right, Michael?
Right. And the important thing I think is the language, right?
Yes.
So we don't say, oh, take the number 6 subway line or the number 6 train or the number 6 subway. We just say take the 6.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
it's the same with the buses, right? So if you're on Madison Avenue and you want to go uptown, take the M4.
Okay. I love it. And this is where connection starts, right? That's our whole philosophy here at All Ears English. If we kind of talk the talk, the connection becomes easier because we feel like we're from the same place. We're all from this amazing city of New York. We can really connect when we're talking the talk.
Right.
Michael, what would be your third vocab that we can run away with here today and make use of right away on our next trip to New York?
All right. So sometimes you're just going to rely on your own 2 feet
Yes.
to get around. Because as you mentioned before, 20 blocks is a mile. This is a walking city. It's very easy to get around the city on foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
On foot means walking.
Mm-hmm.
And we have 2 ways that you can say that, right?
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, New Yorkers kind of like to complain sometimes when they meet their friends, right?
Yes, they
And
do.
so one of the words that I love, and this probably comes from Jewish immigrants from Central Europe 100 years ago,
Okay.
is schlep.
Yes.
SCHLEP, schlep. Schlep means to walk somewhere that's kind of a pain in the neck.
Right, right. And I
Right?
envision carrying things and kind of
Right. I've got my backpack. I've
Right.
just arrived in the city. I've got my backpack. I've got 2 suitcases. I'm in Penn Station. My hotel is 10 blocks away. I don't want to schlep all my bags
Yes.
to the hotel,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yep, that's a great expression. And then as you said before, this expression of hoof it,
Hoof it.
meaning what does that mean then? Is that coming back to physically walking, yeah?
Right. Hoof is the foot of a horse,
Right.
right? A horse has a hoof or
Mm-hmm.
4 hooves.
Right.
But we say that, oh, we're in Penn Station, 34th Street by Macy's. You want to go to Times Square? Let's just hoof it. Well,
Yeah.
let's just walk.
I love that.
So hoof it is like a phrasal verb that you can use. Well, it's not really a phrasal verb, but it's an idiom.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hoof it.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I wonder if the pronunciation would be challenging there for our listeners. It's a strange sound that I feel like is a little less common. Huh,
Hoof.
or the sound.
Huh.
Hoof it. What's your
Hoof it.
favorite area to walk around in New York, Michael? Where do you like to walk? If you just want to go for a walk.
That's a tough one. I like Soho.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of an architecture geek. And I love looking at old buildings, and a lot of the buildings in Soho were built in the late 1800s when iron was kind of a popular material. So the door frame is made of iron. It's really, really interesting, cast iron. So
Very
that's
cool.
kind of a cool neighborhood to look at. And you can still see the fire escape, which is those sets of stairs outside on the outside of the building. So yeah,
Beautiful.
I would say that.
Yeah, that's a great area. I used to love the East Village as well. That's always a great bustling area to walk around,
Yep.
good restaurants. This is fantastic. This makes me want to go back to New York,
Come on.
see my friends, come hang out and just get the vibe. It makes you feel like you're a different, I don't know, it's just something, it gets into you. There's an energy in the city, and I can't find it anywhere else in the world, to be honest. It's amazing.
There's an energy here and good pizza. So come on, come to New York and let's get some pizza.
I love it. So Michael, tell us again where our listeners can find you. You mentioned your podcast earlier. Let us know where we can go right away to check out your show.
Sure. The easiest place is myhappyenglish.com. myhappyenglish.com. That's the website. The podcast is there. Everything else is there. All my courses, everything. So
wonderful. Yeah. So I want to encourage our listeners, guys, go over, check out what Michael's working on. And thanks for having you on the show. It's always a pleasure, Michael, to have you on All Ears English.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. This has been a blast.
Have a great day. Take care.
All right, take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.